Like and subscribe and you'll have amazing luck for the rest of the week. Nobody vanishes without a trace. There is always going to be some sort of explanation behind a person's disappearance, and they're found most of the time. However, there are missing person cases that are unsolved, and the events leading up to and the event itself are truly baffling. With that said, let's take a look at some of them, shall we? Our first one is the vanishing of the Roanoke Colonists. The Roanoke colonists were composed of 115 men, women, and children, who in 1587 landed at what is now known as Roanoke Island, which sits in the Outer Banks of North California. They were sent there all the way from England in order to create an English village. Led by a man named John White, the colonists were middle-class Londoners who sought to escape the city's filth and disease. They saw the New World as a way to acquire land. White returned to England to gather more supplies, and after doing so, he intended to depart for Roanoke immediately. However, a naval war with the Spanish prompted Queen Elizabeth to order all ships into service. White could not sail across the Atlantic until 1590. When he did finally arrive back at Roanoke, White found the colony had been deserted. The buildings lacked any signs of burning and he didn't find human remains, so he couldn't assume the colony had been massacred by the indigenous people who resided there. Since then, many expeditions were sent to find out what actually happened to those 115 people. However, even these expeditions were fraught with bad luck. Many theories were put forward as to what really happened to the Roanoke colony, but despite that, their vanishing still remains to be one of the greatest unsolved disappearances of all time, and is likely to stay that way. Next we come to Owen Parfitt. Owen Parfitt was in his 60s and living with his elderly sister in Shepton Mallet, a town in southwest England. He once lived a wild life, but the lifestyle finally caught up with him and he was virtually a cripple when he disappeared. When he actually disappeared, though, is a bit sketchy at best. Some say it's over in 1973, others in 1978, but they do agree on the other details of his disappearance. One warm evening, Owen was carried outside by a neighbor and his sister so he can sit and relax on the porch. He sat there, watching several farm workers laboring away just across the road. A storm was coming that evening, and so Owen's sister came out onto the porch to bring him back inside, but he was no longer in the chair. Knowing that he couldn't have moved anywhere by himself, she asked the farm workers if they saw someone come get him, but none of them had. His sister enlisted the help of a few farm workers and neighbors to search the area. It wasn't possible Owen could have left on his own, so it seemed like he would be easily found. However, no trace of the crippled man has ever been found since. We now move to JODI HUISENTRUIT. JODI was a news anchor for KIMT-TV when she disappeared from the parking lot of her apartment complex in Mason City, Iowa on Tuesday, June 27, 1995. Police are certain she was abducted within the first few seconds it would have taken JODI to leave her apartment and unlock her car door after she was called by her coworker from the TV station at 4:10 a.m. She was already an hour late for work. Police found some of JODI's belongings strewn about the parking lot next to her car, which included a bank car key which was presumably damaged due to a struggle among other items from JODI's purse. Other kinds of evidence are sparse at best. A partial palm print was found by police on JODI's car. On top of that, they also said they found some hair from the scene. There was also no trace of blood on the scene as well. A man named Tony Jackson confessed to his cellmate that he was involved in the disappearance. He was incarcerated for a separate crime when he did so, though. Jackson was living very close to the TV station in Mason City at the time JODI disappeared, but authorities have yet to verify his claims, making JODI's disappearance still unsolved. Next we have GRICAR. April 15, 2005. It was a beautiful, sunny Friday in central Pennsylvania. It was actually such a nice day that Center County District Attorney Ray GRICAR decided to take the day off from work and go for a very long drive in his bright red Mini Cooper. Ray had been Center County DA for past 2 decades and had announced in January that he would be retiring at the end of the year. Ray told his girlfriend, Patty Fornicola, of his plans to take the day off, and she thought it sounded like a good idea. He also told her that he was going to be driving east on Route 192, a country road that headed to Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. It was a drive that he had made many times before, as there were several antique stores that he frequented in that area. That was the last time the two ever talked. When Ray didn't come home at the time she expected him to be, Patty made repeated calls to his phone, but each one went to voicemail. By 11:30, Patty called 911 to report Ray missing. Several different police agencies spent hours looking throughout Pennsylvania for any sign of Ray or his car. They also alerted 6 neighboring states to be on the lookout for the missing man. This alert would eventually be expanded nationwide. Ray's car was eventually spotted though, parked in a dirt lot outside of Lewisburg. but no sign of Ray. His phone and other belongings were found in his car, but his car keys, laptop, and wallet were all missing. There was DNA found that belonged to another person, but nothing came out of that as well. He's also never been found, but to make things even weirder, his brother Roy disappeared under similar circumstances 9 years earlier. We then move on to Brian Shaffer. Brian Shaffer, a 27-year-old Ohio State medical student, disappeared on April 1st, 2006. On the night of March 31st, he went out on a night with a couple of friends at the Ugly Tuna Saloon into the wee hours of the morning the following day. CCTV footage from inside the bar showed Shaffer arriving at the bar on March 31st, 2006. Around 1:50 a.m. on April 1st, 2006, he's seen walking to women who a friend knew, and then walking back into the bar. He's not seen leaving the bar. In fact, that was the last time anyone actually saw him. Since his disappearance, sightings of Shaffer have been reported to Columbus Police and the FBI on several occasions. The most recent sighting was in 2020, which involved a photo of a man in Mexico that was determined not to be Shaffer by the FBI. Nearly 15 years since the disappearance, investigators are releasing a new photo that they hope will lead to answers. This age progression photo shows what Brian could look like now, and police are hoping that people will recognize him, thus allowing him to either rejoin his family and friends or at least give them much needed closure. Next we come to LARS MITTANK. In 2014, German citizen LARS MITTANK went to Bulgaria for a much-needed vacation. He and a few of his friends stayed in the country for a little over a week, but a few days before going home, Lars got into an altercation with a few locals. This resulted in him getting a ruptured eardrum. The injury was actually severe enough for him to decide to postpone his flight home and stay a few more days alone in Bulgaria, which in hindsight is probably the worst decision he made in his life. This is because, you see, Lars didn't make it home to Germany. In fact, it actually seemed like he disappeared from the face of the earth itself. The last anybody has seen of him was in CCTV footage of the airport. He was seen acting very strangely, as reported by airport employees at the time. At first you can see him entering the airport with his bags, which does look normal enough. However, his demeanor suddenly changed when he went to see the airport doctor. While in the clinic, people reported that he started acting weird, and the footage showed him running from the airport, leaving all of his belongings behind, never to be seen again. He is still missing to this day and is considered the most famous missing person on YouTube, a distinction I'm sure you or anyone you know wouldn't want to have. Now it's time for today's best pick. Today's best pick is a submission from a subscriber just like you, so if you find something mysterious online and want to know more about it, just send it on over to us and we'll look into it for you. Who knows, might even feature in a future video. With that, MEKAYLA BALI. MEKAYLA BALI was only 16 when she was last seen, leaving the Sacred Heart High School just before noon on April 12, 2016. She was never seen again. When she was reported missing, police used surveillance footage to piece together MEKAYLA's last day in Yorkton, Vancouver. Throughout the day, MEKAYLA was seen making several calls from her phone from different parts of Yorkton, using an app called Kik to make most of those calls. She also texted a friend asking her to give her a ride to the bank, which was weird because at the time of the text, banks weren't even open yet. Just after leaving her school, she was seen at a pawn shop where she tried to pawn 2 rings but was unsuccessful. A few minutes after this, she was seen outside a bank, waiting for it to open. She was talking on her phone during the time, but she was using Kik, so no calls were recorded. When the bank did finally open, she went in and withdrew $55 before going to a coffee shop, again spending most of her time on her phone. She left the shop but came back about 20 minutes later. On her return, she approached a complete stranger for help in booking a hotel room, but the strange request was denied. At this point, MEKAYLA texted a couple of her friends, first saying, "I need help," and then next saying, "Don't worry, I figured it out." Shortly after, she went back to school, stayed there only long enough to tell a couple of her friends that she was going on vacation in Regina, and then left again. She was last seen eating lunch near a bus depot. She asked a worker when the next bus to Regina was leaving, but when she was told it wouldn't depart until 5 p.m., she decided not to buy a ticket. There are no records of her buying a bus ticket or getting on a bus that day. She left the depot around 1:45 p.m. and there's been no trace of her since. Which of these disappearances boggled your mind the most? Well, tell us in the comments below. Also, make sure to check out the channel's other amazing content. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Later, everybody.